so many extraordinary things happen, and some of the simplest amuse me, interest me, or I say amuse me, things I'll never forget. In the early days, you probably know, they had electricity cuts almost every morning. And when the electricity went off, it went off for 3 or 4 hours at least.
Yeah.
Now, one time we went in the interview room, Swami always, first of all, switches on the fan. That's one of these big punkers, they call them, noisy. And so you're noisy means to say that, as I do, he talks very quietly, of course. Sometimes it's difficult to hear what he's saying. So when we had a power cut, while we'd only been in there about 10 minutes, and the fan stopped, I thought, thank God, because this is what God did. He just put his hand up like that, pointed at the thing, and said, go, go. And what do you think happened? It went immediately. Same old noise. But, you know, when you think, I have no point in talking about all the rings he's produced. I mean, I've seen everything, necklaces, all these things, changing one ring from one shape to another, one type of ring to another, producing watches, and another thing that makes us laugh, beautiful watches. Having produced it, he'll look at the time, then he looks at the clock on the side there, he said, oh yes, right time. I remember once it was 10 to 8 in the morning. I gave it to the lady. But I suppose one of the miracles we saw there in that interview room, one of our, well, it must be what now, 6, 7 years ago, I suppose, is when he produces what they call laddu. You know laddu, the Indian sweetmeat?
Yes.
Which is
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Yes, it's rather like hot fudge, except fudge is more solid, this is semi-solid. So we were in the interview room, there were 20, 25 people in there, and Swami, you know, produced all the vibhuti, which he always does. Then he called up a little Indian girl, told her to cup her hands like that, and then he simply held his hand like that over her hands, and from his hand just poured down this laddu. It's light-colored stuff, enough to completely fill her hands. And not to fill her hands, it started dropping over, you know, he didn't quite switch off soon enough. So it started dropping off onto the floor. We people who were all around, we were picking it up off the floor because it was absolutely delicious. Needless to say, afterwards it was handed round. There was enough for 25 people. And that laddu was still warm, as though it had come, you know, just out of the oven. Not hot, but warm, just as you would love to have it.
Yes.
Well, that was very impressive. I mean, I've never had any doubts about the miracles, that they are genuine. I mean, there's not an element of no doubt of any sort to me. But, you know, people say, oh, up his sleeve, down his sleeve from here. But, I mean, when you see this going on, just coming out like this, dropping down into her hands, I mean, it couldn't be more clear. And it was other times before he does some of the miracles, because he knows that people there don't, you know, suspect. You'll see him pull these sleeves right up.
I've heard of this.
You know, this happens. There's things that have happened. But I talked non-stop, and I was exhausted by the time we got to Whitefield, but he knows that had happened. But I talked non-stop, and I was exhausted by the time we got to Whitefield, but he insisted on, he was so interested in the story. We get out there, and, okay, in the evening, but I mean, you can put on any face, and having told this chap off, he then lifted his finger up at me, pointed directly at me, and there's nobody all that close to me, and he said, and you too, too much talking. I thought that Swami was aware of the whole of the episode of what had happened in that taxi driving out to Whitefield, where I had talked non-stop for half an hour, and probably a bit of an ego trip with it, you know, all the amazing things that had happened, we had done, and so on. And so when Swami said, you too, too much talking, that's what it was about. And I knew then, for certain, not that I ever had any doubts about Swami, that he's omnipresent, and he was there and aware of every single thing that he points at them. He says, "You're God." And then, he points out, well, I mean, he has done this. The only difference is that he's God and he knows it, you're God and you don't know it. To me, God is the totality. And as he said,
out of the air, and that was again quite an experience. And he took the ring and blew on it twice and changed the symbol, and then showed everybody in the room, then blew again, changed the symbol again. First of all he changed to a cross, and then I watched very closely. I put my glasses on and he blew on it and it changed to the Islamic moon and star. And then when he put it on my finger, it changed back to the Om. So before I'd even got to even got to sort of get used to the place, I'd seen all these things being done before my wife was converted by the fact that it fits my finger perfectly. She wasn't sure what was going on until she said, well, how could he have worked out exactly what size your finger was? Anyway, these are small things in a way.
First hear of Sai Baba, they usually hear of the miracles that he performs on a daily basis. These miracles include materializations of rings and necklaces or a sacred ash called vibhuti. Other miracles include healing the sick and assisting people in distress all over the world. Sai Baba explains that these miracles are done simply to inspire people to begin their own personal transformations.
The other day in the Mandir, Swami gave us Westerners a very wonderful, inspiring and intimate talk. And in the middle of this talk, he was declaring his true nature, and he was saying how he is in fact, although he appears to us as a human being, he's not that at all. And then, quite astoundingly, he moved his hand in very large, sort of strong circles, and a diamond appeared in his hand. It was a big diamond. It was flashing and sparkling. And he said, "Look, look, look." And then he blew on it and it was gone. And it was very, very remarkable.
What he did a ring for me in an interview a year and a half or so ago.
Is that your ring?
Yes, but unfortunately, after he put it on my finger, it would not come off. And you can see that his image is slowly disappearing because I tend to work with my hands a lot, and sometimes I work with cement and different things, and so it's slowly wearing his image off. Maybe he'll do something, who knows. His hand was right here, as close as so I could, and I've seen him materialize vibhuti at that distance, and you can.
On one day when he was giving a discourse on Bhagavad Gita, it was raining very, very heavily, and we were all sitting outside the auditorium, and it was raining on the left and it was raining on the right, and it was coming towards us, and we were all prayed. I prayed personally that, Swami, you've got to stop this rain. And you won't believe, I could see Swami from where I was sitting, and Swami held his hand up like that in the air, and it was raining on the left, it was raining on the right, but where people were sitting listening to the discourse, there was no rain. And after the discourse, when we went home, it really poured everywhere.
The camera detects nothing amiss, but the authenticity of these feats will remain unproven until Sai Baba agrees to a scientific investigation. They come here hoping he will perform a miracle for them or for a loved one. And miracles of a kind do happen. In one of his rituals, Sai Baba materializes vibhuti, or holy ashes, apparently out of thin air. With a light movement of his hand, he scatters the white powder.
The ochre robe. This is the special occasion of the Sara celebrations. The white dress on that night, Bhagavan materializes a golden chain. The Divine Master here presents a chain. Man, there are thousands to do it, but he does not. He wants to do it himself. This is an occasion when one of an eminent artist, Pandit Jasraj, receiving a speciality. How lucky are the people around who have watched it. Every creation, water, the five elements. We are eager to give our letters of prayer to Bhagavan. But Swami is omniscient, omnipresent. He knows the very contents as we start writing, scribbling on paper. Here is a letter given by a boy. Swami knows what he has kept inside the cover. Along with the letter, he also kept a 10-rupee note. Yes, Swami says, I know my boy, and pass it on back to that boy. A proof thou cowherd Krishna. And today, Bhagavan Baba. This year's Guru Purnima is marked by a music program organized by country presented their own popular item, and Bhagavan in his infinite mercy, and Bhagavan talking to a foreigner and presenting him a golden ring. In particular, specially dressed for the occasion, and everyone is...
It may not be suffering for you, but we feel pain. Swami, please, you can just wave your hand and create that lingam. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Sai Ram.
Answer, you just wave your hand like that, and here is when you stall for interview. He comes up and waits where you wait outside the room. With the man, you say, where's wife? Because as you know, if the husband stalls, the wife is allowed to come up and vice versa. And because of what you haven't seen, because I've seen so many extraordinary things happen, and some of the simplest and new